The cameras are rolling, the lights are blazing, and the Tonight Show stage is alive with its usual energy. Studio audiences chatter excitedly, unaware that this evening is about to become one of the most talked-about moments in late-night television history. The warm glow of the stage lights reflects off the polished floor, illuminating every detail of the set, from the gleaming desk where Jimmy Fallon will sit to the perfectly arranged chairs for his guests. Everything looks picture-perfect, a stage meticulously crafted for charm and laughter. Yet behind the scenes, tension hangs thick in the air, almost tangible, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Robert Downey Jr. steps into the studio with his signature swagger, his eyes scanning the room. There's a practiced calmness in his posture, but those who know him well notice something different tonight. A subtle tightness in his jaw, a flicker of irritation in his gaze. Crew members whisper among themselves, sensing that something is off. Producers exchange quick glances, silently hoping that the chemistry between host and guest will carry the show through the evening. The audience claps politely as Robert takes his seat, unaware that the man in front of them is carrying a weight far heavier than the lights or the cameras. Jimmy Fallon enters moments later, the familiar grin on his face, his energy high, ready to charm and entertain. His laughter fills the room as he greets Robert, but there's a subtle edge, almost imperceptible, in his voice. A comment meant to be playful lands differently this time. Robert's eyes narrow, a half-smile barely concealing a brewing storm. The first exchange seems minor, a joke, a jab, a casual remark, but it carries a weight neither man fully recognizes yet. The tension simmers, a quiet warning that tonight will not unfold like any other episode. As the interview begins, the cameras capture every moment. Jimmy leans in, asking questions laced with humor, aiming to coax anecdotes and charm from his guest. Robert responds with his usual wit, quick and sharp, but tonight each retort carries a subtle bite. The banter is no longer lighthearted. It feels like a duel, a careful dance on the edge of civility. Crew members glance nervously at monitors, sensing the energy shift, the growing friction between two charismatic forces. The audience laughs at the surface, but there is an undercurrent of unease, an almost imperceptible tension threading through every word. In one particularly charged moment, Jimmy makes a playful reference to Robert's past roles, a line he has used many times before with countless guests. Normally, this would be met with laughter, a shared joke. But Robert pauses, his smile stiff, his tone clipped. "Yeah, well, let's not go there tonight," he says, voice low but firm. The camera captures the subtle change in body language. Slight lean back in his chair, the tightening of his hands. Jimmy notices it, a brief flicker of uncertainty crossing his expression. The live audience senses it too, though they don't fully understand why their laughter feels a fraction delayed. A beat off. As the interview progresses, small provocations begin to escalate. A misinterpreted joke, an overly casual gesture, a remark that touches on sensitive territory. All of it adds layers to the tension. The narrative unfolds like a slow-burning fuse, each exchange a spark, each glance a warning. Off-camera, production assistants whisper and glance at each other, concerned. There's a palpable anxiety that something will snap, though everyone hopes it won't. The audience remains engaged, laughing at the surface while the undercurrent of conflict thickens invisibly around them. Then comes the moment that will be replayed endlessly across media platforms. A line delivered with casual charm, a setup for a light-hearted anecdote lands differently than intended. Robert's patience, tested in frame, reaches a tipping point. He leans forward, voice rising slightly, tension now audible. The camera catches the subtle shift, the tightening of his jaw, the hardening of his eyes, the sudden firmness in his posture. Jimmy, momentarily thrown, laughs nervously, attempting to diffuse the energy, but it's too late. The atmosphere has changed, irreversibly. The audience, still laughing, is unaware that the evening has reached a critical turning point. Robert stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, a sharp, jarring sound that cuts through the rehearsed rhythm of the show. The live cameras catch it all, the abrupt movement freezing the audience mid-laugh. Jimmy's grin falters, replaced with a mixture of surprise and confusion. The crew exchanges quick, urgent looks. There is no script for this moment, no rehearsed line to cover the breach in flow. The audience, initially startled, begins to murmur, sensing that what they are witnessing is no ordinary live television moment. The tension is electric. Robert's gaze locks briefly on Jimmy, a flash of frustration and incredulity visible in his eyes. "I'm done with this," he says, voice low but cutting, echoing in the hushed studio. Then, almost in a single fluid motion, he turns and walks toward the stage exit. The audience erupts not in applause, but in a confused mix of gasps, whispers, and tentative laughter. The live broadcast captures every second, every heartbeat of the confrontation, as cameras pivot to cover the unexpected departure. The studio, once orderly and controlled, now feels chaotic, as if time itself has fractured. Behind the scenes, producers rush to assess the situation, their voices rising over the buzz of confusion. Stagehands move quickly to adjust the set, while assistants huddle near monitors, trying to gauge the impact of the walk-off. Social media, though delayed by a few minutes, begins to light up as viewers at home witness the incident. Clips of Robert's abrupt exit are already being shared, dissected, and debated in real time. The narrative spreads faster than any pre-planned segment could, a reminder of the unpredictable power of live television. As Robert disappears backstage, the audience is left with an unsettling silence, punctuated only by Jimmy's nervous chuckle and attempts to maintain composure. "Well, that was unexpected," he says, voice faltering slightly, trying to steer the show back on course. The camera captures the subtle, human moment fallibility on display, vulnerability exposed in the glare of millions of eyes. The tension lingers, a residue that will not dissipate quickly, foreshadowing a storm that extends far beyond the confines of the studio. In that instant, a simple talk show segment transforms into a cultural event, a case study in celebrity pressure, ego, and the volatile intersection of public persona and private emotion. Behind the polished smiles and practiced jokes, the world witnesses a raw, unscripted human reaction, frustration, vulnerability, and the limits of charm under scrutiny. Every camera angle, every close-up of clenched fists or pursed lips, every paused breath captured in slow motion, tells a story of tension that audiences at home can almost feel physically. As the episode concludes. Though the cameras continue rolling and the credits eventually appear, the impact of the moment lingers. Social media explodes with clips and commentary. News outlets scramble to analyze the fallout, and fans replay the heated exchange, debating who was right, who misstepped, and what it all means. The Tonight Show, known for laughter, is now a stage of conflict, a reminder that even in the most controlled environments, human emotion can erupt in ways that are both fascinating and unpredictable. And in that charged silence, one undeniable truth becomes clear. No amount of rehearsals, scripts, or charisma can fully contain the complexity of human interactions under the spotlight. Robert Downey Jr. walked off the stage, but the reverberations of that moment would echo far beyond the walls of the studio, into social media, into newsrooms, and into the public consciousness, marking the beginning of a story that the world would watch, analyze, and never forget. The stage is quiet now, but the story has only just begun. Every glance, every whispered conversation, every lingering camera angle hints at the tension yet to unfold. The Tonight Show, a bastion of entertainment, has witnessed a rare collision of personalities, a collision that will leave its mark on celebrity culture, media narratives, and the very way we understand what happens when fame, ego, and human emotion collide in real time. The audience at home might think the show is over, but for those who saw it happen live, the drama has only just started. The Tonight Show stage had barely settled from the shock of Robert Downey Jr.'s abrupt exit when the questions began to circulate. What had triggered the clash, and why had a seemingly lighthearted interview turned into a live spectacle of tension? To understand, one must rewind to the moment the cameras first rolled and dissect the series of interactions that led to the breaking point. What began as playful banter slowly escalated, revealing fault lines in the dynamic between host and guest, fissures that were invisible to the casual viewer, but glaring to those paying attention behind the scenes. Jimmy Fallon, known for his affable demeanor and improvisational wit, had opened with his trademark charm, asking Robert about his latest film projects, teasing him gently about his famously enigmatic persona. "So, are we going to see Tony Stark make a comeback, or are we giving him a well-deserved vacation?" Jimmy quipped, a line that in a different context might have drawn laughter and camaraderie. Robert smiled faintly, but there was a hesitation, a subtle tension in the shoulders and jaw that suggested his mind was elsewhere. Sources close to the actor revealed that Robert had been under immense pressure, juggling multiple projects while dealing with the relentless gaze of the media, a scrutiny that had been intensifying for months. As the interview continued, Fallon's questions, though well-intentioned, touched on areas Robert considered sensitive. A reference to a previous interview, a joke about past controversies, even a seemingly innocuous remark about his reputation for improvisation, all became points of friction. The audience laughed, unaware that beneath the surface, a psychological duel was unfolding. Robert's responses grew sharper, the charm masking an undercurrent of frustration. Crew members behind the monitors whispered in disbelief, sensing the energy shift as words became veiled critiques and playful jabs, morphed into pointed remarks. One particularly charged exchange involved a discussion of Robert's public persona versus his private self. Jimmy, in an attempt to humanize the actor for the audience, probed gently, "Do you ever feel like people only see Tony Stark when they look at you?" Robert's eyes narrowed slightly, his voice dropping to a measured, controlled tone. "You know, sometimes it feels like the character never leaves me alone," he replied. The comment was subtle, but it carried weight, a reminder that fame is a constant companion, that every joke or tease from a host has the potential to reopen private wounds. The camera caught a flicker of tension in Fallon's eyes, an almost imperceptible pause, the kind that only those trained to read human behavior can detect. The dialogue escalated from there. Each response from Robert was infused with a dry wit, but the underlying frustration became harder to mask. He laughed at certain lines, yet his laughter was tight, almost forced, a signal to anyone watching closely that he was navigating a precarious emotional landscape. Fallon, sensing the shift, attempted to diffuse tension with humor, a casual jab here, a lighthearted question there, but the usual chemistry was fractured. The studio, bathed in bright lights and filled with the hum of audience anticipation, became a crucible where ego, pride, and past grievances collided in real time. Off camera, assistants and producers tried to anticipate the moment when control might slip. One producer later recounted that they had noticed Robert's responses becoming increasingly clipped after a casual joke about his personal life. "It wasn't malicious," the producer said, "but it hit a nerve. And in that environment, nerves are combustible." The audience, still laughing at the surface, had no way of knowing that the performance unfolding before them was not scripted, that the polished veneer of live television was cracking in real time. Every gesture, every pause, Every micro-expression was a sign of tension escalating toward its inevitable climax. Then came the pivotal moment. Fallon made an offhand joke about Robert's reputation for improvisation during intense scenes in his films. "You know, we all wait for you to just improv your way through life," Fallon teased, flashing a grin meant to charm. Robert, however, did not meet the joke with the usual warmth. His smile was thin, measured, and his voice carried a sharper edge than before. "Sometimes improvisation isn't enough," he replied, a statement that sounded simple on the surface, but was loaded with frustration. The audience chuckled nervously, sensing the uneven energy in the room, while the crew exchanged uneasy looks. The subtle shift in tone was unmistakable. The interview had moved from playful banter to a tense verbal sparring match. Robert's body language mirrored his words. He leaned back slightly, arms crossed, eyes narrowing not in anger at Fallon personally, but in an attempt to assert control over the narrative. Fallon, recognizing the change, adjusted his approach, leaning forward and softening his voice, trying to re-establish rapport. Yet the friction persisted, the tension almost palpable, even through the lens of the cameras. Every line exchanged carried the weight of unspoken grievances, of exhaustion, of the pressures of a career lived under constant observation. The audience, captivated, could feel the stakes rising even without knowing the full context. The live broadcast amplified the pressure. Unlike a pre-recorded segment, there was no room to edit, no safety net for missteps. Every word, every expression was immediately visible to millions. The power dynamics on stage were clear. Fallon, the seasoned host, skilled in maintaining charm and control, versus Robert, the world-renowned actor, confident in his abilities, but weary from external pressures. The collision of these forces created a tension that crackled like static electricity, the kind that makes viewers lean forward instinctively, anticipating the moment something will give. As the segment continued, the exchanges became quicker, sharper, and more charged. Robert's wit, usually a tool of charm, now functioned as a shield, deflecting what he perceived as invasive questions. Fallon's humor, equally sharp, became a probe, testing boundaries, seeking to maintain audience engagement. The cameras captured every flicker of emotion, a raised eyebrow, a pursed lip, a brief flash of exasperation. Behind the monitors, the production team whispered, aware that a significant moment in television history was quietly unfolding. Finally, the tension reached its peak. A casual quip meant to be light was received as a provocation. Robert paused, inhaled deeply, and in a measured, unmistakable tone, delivered the line that would signal the turning point. "I'm done with this." The words hung in the air, an audible crack in the polished surface of the live show. The audience, unsure of what to make of the sudden gravity, murmured while Fallon froze mid-gesture, caught off guard. It was the quiet before the storm, the narrative hinge on which the entire evening would pivot. Robert stood, chair scraping sharply against the floor, every movement deliberate, every step resonating through the studio. The cameras captured the motion in real time, the audience gasping, laughter cut short by the tangible weight of unfolding drama. Crew members exchanged hurried glances, knowing instinctively that this was not a simple exit. It was a statement, a rare moment of unfiltered emotion broadcast live to millions. Fallon's attempts to recover were met with tension so thick it was almost visual audible, palpable friction that transcended words. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled, trying to gauge the fallout, while social media began to erupt with clips, reactions, and speculation. Within minutes, the incident had become the most discussed moment of the night, trending across platforms and dominating online discourse. Analysts and commentators would later describe it as a textbook example of how fame, pressure, and human emotion can collide in public, producing a spectacle that is as compelling as it is unpredictable. The story of that moment, however, is not simply about confrontation. It is about the fragility of public personas, the unseen pressures actors endure, and the volatile energy of live television. Robert Downey Jr., in Standing Up and Walking Off, reminded the world that beneath the charm and talent lies a human being capable of frustration, pride, and the desire to reclaim personal boundaries. The clash, captured in real time, resonates because it exposes the raw, unfiltered humanity behind the carefully curated image of celebrity life. Even after Robert disappeared backstage, the echoes of the exchange lingered. Fallon, poised and professional, continued with the segment, but the air was different. The polished veneer of entertainment had cracked, leaving a moment that would be dissected endlessly, shared and reshared, becoming a cultural touchstone. For discussions about celebrity, ego, and the unpredictable power of live television, it was a reminder that in a world of rehearsed smiles and scripted lines, authenticity, especially when laced with tension, cannot be contained. The Tonight Show had witnessed a moment few could have anticipated. The cameras caught it all, the subtle cues of rising frustration, the verbal sparring, the sudden, dramatic exit. For those watching at home, it was shocking and enthralling. For those behind the scenes, it was a vivid illustration of the delicate balance required to navigate the pressures of fame under constant scrutiny. And for Robert Downey Jr., it was a declaration of self-possession, a boundary drawn in real time, live on one of the world's most visible stages. This clash, seemingly spontaneous, had roots in months of cumulative stress, public scrutiny, and professional pressure, all converging in a single, unforgettable television moment. It set the stage for a media frenzy, fan debates, and a broader conversation about the intersection of celebrity, humor, and human emotion, a story that would continue to unfold long after the studio lights dimmed. As the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, the incident that had unfolded on The Tonight Show was already reverberating far beyond the walls of the set. Social media lit up instantly, users uploading clips of Robert Downey Jr.'s abrupt exit, looping the moment over and over, dissecting every micro-expression, every pause, every subtle shift in tone. Hashtags like #Downey vs. Fallon and #Tonight Show Meltdown began trending, and within minutes, the story had become a viral sensation. The clips spread across platforms, shared by celebrities, fans, and news outlets alike, sparking an immediate debate. What had caused the clash, and whose side should the public take? Newsrooms scrambled to cover the story, running split-screen analyses of the incident, playing the same moments repeatedly while commentators offered their opinions. Late-night hosts referenced it in their monologues, comedians joked about it, and entertainment reporters dug into Robert Downey Jr.'s recent public appearances and statements, searching for context. Everyone had a theory, and every theory became fodder for discussion. Some speculated that the clash was a culmination of Robert's well-documented frustrations with the press, while others suggested it was simply a misreading of Fallon's playful teasing. Regardless of the interpretation, the spectacle itself was undeniable. Millions of people had witnessed something raw, unscripted, and emotionally charged. The speed at which social media amplifies such moments was astonishing. Within hours, the clip had amassed millions of views. Memes emerged almost immediately, some portraying Robert as a heroic figure standing up for himself, others casting Fallon as the unwitting provocateur. Fans debated fiercely. Was Robert justified in walking off, or had he overreacted to a harmless joke? Analysts noted that the intensity of reactions reflected a broader cultural fascination with celebrity vulnerability, particularly when it occurs live. This wasn't just entertainment. It was an intimate glimpse into the tension, pressure, and and predictability inherent in fame. Meanwhile, the industry itself was abuzz. Insiders described the show's backstage environment as chaotic, with producers and assistants scrambling to assess both the immediate impact and potential long-term repercussions. One producer explained that the first priority was damage control. We had to manage the narrative quickly, make sure that the story didn't spiral beyond what we could handle. Live television leaves no room for mistakes. Legal and PR teams were consulted, press releases drafted, and unofficial statements circulated quietly to gauge responses before anything went public. It was a delicate balancing act, mitigating fallout while trying to protect both the talent and the brand of the show. Fans, however, were not content to wait for the official word. Clips were dissected frame by frame. The way Robert's jaw tightened, the subtle narrowing of his eyes, Fallon's nervous laughter, the slight pause before he tried to recover. Every moment became evidence in a rapidly forming narrative. Social. Media commentary highlighted what professional analysts often called the unspoken language of tension, micro-expressions and body language cues that reveal far more than words alone. In the days that followed, experts were interviewed on news outlets, decoding the unfiltered signals of stress, pride, and frustration that had played out in front of millions. The story gained another layer when insiders from the show offered their perspectives anonymously. They described months of behind-the-scenes tension leading up to that night, small disagreements, creative differences, and minor slights that had never reached the public eye. While nothing on its own might have seemed significant, compounded. Over time, it created a pressure cooker environment. When Fallon's seemingly innocuous joke touched on one of Robert's known sensitivities, the result was explosive. The narrative that emerged in the media framed the clash as both inevitable and extraordinary, a rare, unscripted collision of personality, stress, and public scrutiny. Journalists explored the broader cultural implications. Why did this moment captivate the public so completely? Analysts argued that it offered a break from the polished, controlled world of celebrity appearances. The public rarely witnesses raw emotion from icons, and when it does occur, it resonates. People empathize with frustration, with standing up for oneself, with the tension of navigating a world that demands constant charm and composure. Robert's walk-off became more than an entertainment story. It was a commentary on fame, power, and the fragile humanity hidden behind celebrity personas. Across media platforms, the incident was dissected with meticulous attention. Late-night commentators and talk show hosts repeatedly referenced it, often with humor, but always acknowledging the intensity of the exchange. Clips from the episode were paired with interviews from psychologists and body language experts who explained why Robert's response was both understandable and compelling. Meanwhile, fan forums and discussion boards exploded with speculation. What had been said off-camera? Had apologies been exchanged? Was there lingering resentment? The story transcended the initial broadcast, morphing into a multi-layered cultural conversation that reached millions around the world. Even traditional news outlets could not ignore the story. Morning shows replayed the clip for analysis, and entertainment journalists compiled timelines of events leading up to the walk-off. Reports examined Robert's recent interviews, public statements, and media interactions, piecing together a narrative that contextualized his frustration. Some outlets framed it as a clash of egos. Others highlighted it as a rare moment of authenticity. In a highly controlled industry, the diversity of interpretations only fueled the story's reach, drawing in viewers who might not normally follow celebrity news, but found themselves captivated by the raw, human drama unfolding before them. Meanwhile, the show itself faced a new set of challenges. Producers had to consider audience perception, advertiser concerns, and the broader implications for live television. What had been intended as a routine entertaining segment had transformed into a case study in tension management, public relations, and the unpredictability of high-profile appearances. Interviews with behind-the-scenes staff revealed a mixture of awe and anxiety as they navigated the immediate aftermath while preparing for the inevitable public scrutiny. Social media continued to amplify the story with unprecedented speed. Short clips, slow-motion replays, and commentary videos multiplied rapidly, each iteration reframing the narrative slightly, shaping public perception. Influencers, bloggers, and journalists added context, speculated on motives, and debated ethics. Every new post brought more attention, more engagement, and more pressure for both Robert and Fallon. In this environment, a single unplanned moment became a phenomenon, illustrating the immense power of live television when paired with the viral nature of modern media. The incident also sparked reflection within the entertainment industry. Executives, talent agents, and PR professionals analyzed it as a lesson in managing high-profile guests and navigating on-air dynamics. Discussions ranged from how to handle sensitive topics with celebrities to strategies for de-escalating tension during live broadcasts. Robert Downey Jr.'s walk-off became a reference point for understanding the unpredictable nature of celebrity behavior under pressure, demonstrating that even seasoned professionals can reach their limit when provoked, intentionally or not. As the initial shock began to subside, a more nuanced picture emerged. Analysts, journalists, and fans recognized that Robert's actions were not just a reaction to a single joke. They were the result of accumulated stress, high expectations, and the intense scrutiny of a public career. Fallon's role, too, was re-evaluated. His humor, while intended to entertain, intersected with Robert's boundaries in a way that triggered a raw emotional response. The collision of these forces created a moment that was both extraordinary and revealing, exposing the tension between persona and person, performance and reality. In the days that followed, the narrative continued to evolve. Robert's fans praised him for asserting himself. Others criticized the walk-off as overreacting. Media commentators debated Fallon's responsibility in escalating the tension. The story became a lens through which broader issues of fame, pressure, and human emotion were examined. Psychologists discussed the mental toll of constant public exposure. Industry insiders considered the risks of live interviews with high-profile guests. And viewers at home continued to dissect the footage, captivated by a drama that unfolded in real time. Through it all, one thing became clear. The Tonight Show incident was more than a fleeting viral moment. It was a cultural event, a convergence of celebrity, media, and human emotion that captured global attention. The clip of Robert Downey Jr.'s walk-off, paired with the subtle cues of escalating tension, became a symbol of the unpredictable nature of live performance and the fragile balance between public persona and private reality. In the fast-paced world of media, where moments are instantly broadcast, analyzed, and remixed, this event demonstrated the profound impact that authenticity and the occasional eruption of raw emotion can have on audiences worldwide.